Om Vishwandarpana Drishyamana Nagari Tulyan Nijantargatam Pashyannatmani Mayaya Bahirivo Bhutayatha Nidraya Yasakshat Kurute Prabodha Samaye Swatmanamevadvayam Tasmai Shri Gurumurtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Narayanam Padmabhuvam Vasishtam Shaktin च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तन्तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यान् अस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः परब्रह्मनिष्ठं स्वतो धर्मनिष्ठं अहिंसैकनिष्ठं स्वशिष्यै सुजुष्टं यतीनां वरिष्ठं गुरूणां गरिष्ठं दयानन्दरूपं मदाचार्यमीडे नमः श्री परमार्थाय संसाराध्यासनाशिने श्रोत्रिय ब्रह्मनिष्ठाय तस्मै ब्रह्मविदे नमः सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् I welcome you all to the 37th class of the Fundamentals of Vedanta series. We will start with the Mangala Shloka of Tattva Bodha, and you can chant along with me. Vasudevendra Yogindram Natva Jnanapradam Gurum Mumukshunam Hitathaya Tattva Bodho Bhidhiyate. We have entered Tattva Bodha. Tattva Bodha means knowledge of reality. Bodha is knowledge, and Tattva refers to the real nature of anything, the real nature of everything. Why is it important? As we saw, that we don't understand the real nature of something, we invariably end up mistaking it. As we saw in the example of the shirt, we say that the shirt exists. We take the shirt to be a reality. But when we inquire into it, we find that it is the fabric that exists. The shirt is an appearance. The shirt appears to exist. And when we inquire into it further, we find that's the yarns that exist. It is the fibers that exist. It is the cotton that exists. So when we come to the tattva of cotton in this limited example, then the shirt, the fabric, the yarn, the fibers of cotton, etc., that I earlier took to be a reality, they are reduced to appearances. And then I understand it's the cotton that really exists. The shirt is a cotton all the way. The fabric is a cotton all the way. It's cotton all the way. There is nothing but cotton. And this alters my vision of how I look at something. It alters my vision completely. So if I don't understand the tattva, then I end up taking the incidental to be the essential. The fabric is an incidental name and form of cotton, the yarn, the fiber, etc. They are all incidental names and forms of cotton. If I have not understood that what is really there is cotton, then I take the shirt to be a reality. I may take the fabric to be a reality, the yarn to be a reality. Therefore, the vision of Vedanta is extremely, extremely important to understand what is reality, what is really here. And if we don't understand that, we will invariably end up mistaking something else to be the reality. That is what we have been doing all our lives. So, this, according to Vedanta, there is one tattva that pervades everything, Jiva, Jagat, and Ishvara. And this tattva is synonymous with Brahman. Brahman pervades everything. And it's also synonymous with Atma, because Atma is the essence of the individual, as we'll see today. So the terms Tattva, Brahman, and Atma, they are all synonymous terms. Therefore, Tattva Bodha is the same as Atma Bodha, or self-knowledge, or Brahma Bodha, knowledge of the reality. And as we saw, the author, after the Mangala Shloka, gave a short preface. साधन चतुष्टय संपन्नाधिकारिणां मोक्ष साधन भूतं तत्व विवेक प्रकारं वक्ष्यामः. So in this, the author clearly described who the adhikari is. Sadhana chatushtaya sampannadhikarinam, one who has sadhana chatushtaya sampattihi. Vivekah, vairagyam, shamadishatka sampattihi, and mumukshutvam. Then what is the prayojanam? So this preface describes the Anubandha Chatushtayam, the fourfold factors that bind the student and the study. The prayojanam is moksha, because what the author is talking about is moksha sadhana bhutam. It's a means to moksha, so the prayojanam is moksha. And then what is the vishaya? Moksha sadhana bhutam tattva viveka prakaram vakshyamaha. So the vishaya is the moksha sadhana bhutam tattva viveka prakaram, the method of the discriminative analysis of tattva, the method for arriving at the discriminative knowledge of tattva. This is the subject matter. So why this discriminative knowledge? Why couldn't the author have just said knowledge? Because this tattva is not entirely unknown to us. It is known to me as the very I. I have the samanya jnanam of this tattva. What I lack is the vishesha jnanam. And because the samanya jnanam is there, the vishesha jnanam is not there, I have mistaken this tattva to be something else. I have taken myself to be something else. And therefore, whenever there is a mix-up, there is a need to clear the mix-up. That is why this vivekaha, this separation is required. I have to clearly understand what is what. As we saw in the example of a red flower placed next to a crystal. A child says the crystal is red. The child mistakenly attributes the redness of the flower to the crystal. Whatever is experienced is taken at face value. And then the child says the crystal is red. But on further inquiry, the child can be taught that this redness belongs to the flower that is next to the crystal. The crystal is colorless. There is no redness in the crystal. Similarly, we take the sun to go around the earth. We experience the sun rising in the east and setting in the west. And therefore, we attribute the movement to the sun. But really, the movement belongs to the earth. Because one has not understood the reality, one has made a mistake. Therefore, again, a discriminative inquiry is required where one is told that the sun is motionless. The movement belongs to the earth. It's the earth that rotates, and in the absence of the knowledge of the rotation of the earth, one mistakenly attributes the movement to the sun. The movement that belongs to the earth is attributed to the sun. Similarly, in this world, and based on what Vedanta teaches, I have taken myself. In fact, this is before Vedanta comes in, I have taken myself to be a mortal Jiva. I have taken the world to be real, and I have taken Ishvara to be somebody who is remote. Ishvara may not be there or may be there, I don't know, but Ishvara is there. I'm pretty convinced that Ishvara is somewhere remote. Attributed mortality to myself, reality to the world, and remoteness to Ishvara. Vedanta says all of these are mistakes because one has not understood the tattva that pervades the jivaha, jagat, and ishvaraha. And in the non-understanding of this tattva, there is misunderstanding of the tattva. That is why a discriminative inquiry is required. And as we saw that this Tattva Viveka Prakaraha, Tattva Viveka Prakaram Vakshamaha is Moksha Sadhana Bhutam. This Tattva Viveka Prakaram is Moksha Sadhanam. This Tattva Viveka Prakaraha leads to Tattva Bodha. The knowledge of the Tattva, the knowledge leads to Moksha. Because Jnanam is the Eka Sadhanam. For moksha, moksha is eka sadhana sadhyam, where the sadhanam is jnanam, which is this tattva bodha that one gets through this tattva viveka prakaraha. So this is the sambandha, the fourth of the anubandha chatushtayam. So after this, the author went on to discuss the qualifications. The Shishya, this is the entire text is in the form of a dialogue. And since the author had used the word sadhana chatushtaya sampannadhikarinam, he had used the term before defining it. Therefore, the Shishya asks, sadhana chatushtayam kim? What is this sadhana chatushtaya? And then the author went on in great detail to describe what that is, what the fourfold qualifications are. Nitya nitya vastu vivekaha, iha mutrartha phalabhoga viragaha, shamadhi shatka sampattihi mumukshutvam cheti. So since we have discussed this in great detail, and last week we essentially summarized all of this, I will not go into that again. So we will move to the next topic now. So the author had used the term Tattva Vivekaha a few times. One is Moksha Sadhana Bhutam Tattva Viveka Prakaram Vakshyamaha, the author had said. And then Tataha, after describing the qualifications, the author said, Tataha Tattva Vivekasyadhikarino Bhavanti. And then with these qualifications, one becomes an adhikari for this Tattva Vivekaha. So this term Tattva Vivekaha has been used twice in the text. So the Shishya next asks, what is this Tattva Vivekaha? So that is the part that we will read today and then proceed. So I will read, and Sharadaji, you can repeat after me. Tattva vivekah kaha.
Tattva vivekah kaha.
Atma satyam tadanyat sarvam mithyeti.
Atma satyam tadanyat sarvam mithyeti.
So this is on the 4th page of the PDF that I had sent today. I hope you are all able to locate that. So the student is asking, what is this Tattva Vivekaha? What do you mean by this discriminative knowledge of reality, this discriminative knowledge of truth? So the author summarizes the essence of Vedanta in this single sentence. Atma Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyeti. And in this process, the author is using a few technical terms that we have to understand. So this is a Sutra Bhuta Vakyam. This is like a single short sentence that summarizes the entire teaching, or a Sangraha Vakyam. And the author will himself expand a lot of this later. But here, what we have to understand is that the author uses three technical terms in Vedanta. One is Atma, the second is Satyam, and the third is Mithya. And it is impossible to translate all of these words into English, because there are no equivalent English words really. Atma is often translated as the soul, etc. If you see in the textbooks, you will find words like soul, S-O-U-L. And these translations don't really do justice, because typically a lot of these words in English, they already have overloaded meanings from other contexts. Therefore, they are not accurate representations of what this word technically means in Vedanta. And in fact, even in our colloquial context, etc., people use the word Atma very loosely, because when somebody passes away, we are used to saying that unki Atma ko shanti mile, etc., which are using the Atma term in a different meaning. And that is not the meaning here. So, to understand what Atma really is, one has to understand the technical definition of this, which Vedanta gives, which we'll come to. So, we will continue to use these words Atma, Satyam, and Mithya. But before we come to Atma, we will recap what we have discussed about Satyam and Mithya, and make some more progress on the understanding of Satyam and Mithya. So, what are Satyam and Mithya? So, these are not words that refer to objects in the world. For example, if I say a stone, bring me a stone, or bring me a flower, then these words refer to objects in the world. But then Satyam and Mithya don't refer to objects in the world. But Satyam and Mithya are in some sense meta terms, meta words that refer to the status of existence of objects in the world. So I cannot say, bring me 1 kilogram of Satyam, or bring me 1 liter of Mithya, because these are not objects, but these words refer to what my understanding of the existence of objects is. So we will come back to our favorite example, which we discussed a few classes ago, which is of a bangle. So let's imagine I'm holding a bangle in my hand. I ask you, what is this? Then you say it's a bangle. Let's say I say that this is gold. So now, are these two statements equal? Are these two equivalent statements is the question. If you look at the word gold, it is not a synonym of bangle. If you had said this is gold, and I had said uh, this is a kankana or this is a kada, and those would have been synonymous words. The language is different. That's all. In that case, the two statements would be equivalent. Whereas here, the language is the same. You say this is a bangle, well, I say this is gold. The language is the same, but the word is not a synonymous word. Then the question arises that are these two statements, they cannot be equally right. There's one more right than the other. We say that is the case. And let's look into it. When we inquire into the bangle, we come to the surprising discovery that bangle is not a substance at all. The bangle is not a tangible, weighty substance. So, what is the substance then? The substance is the gold. So, if I ask for the weight of the bangle, and the bangle is not a substance at all, it doesn't make sense to talk about the weight of the bangle. For example, let us say that there is a person, you ask the person, do you have a child? The person says, no, I don't have a child. And then there is a follow-up question, what is the age of your child? When the child is not there at all, then the age of the child doesn't make sense at all. So similarly here, when the bangle is not the tangible weighty substance, it doesn't make sense to talk about the weight of the bangle. One can talk about the weight of the gold. So what's the substance is really the gold. The gold is the saraha. It is the substance. When I touch the bangle, I'm really touching the gold. When I weigh the bangle, I am weighing the gold. When I go to a goldsmith and give the bangle and say, give me something else in return, the goldsmith really just weighs the gold. He doesn't care about the form of it. So the saraha is gold. And then there's another dimension to it. That before this bangle came into existence, gold alone was the gold alone was there. And even after this bangle came into existence, gold alone is really there, even now. And after this bangle will be melted, let us say, and molded into some other form, the gold still remains. The gold is the saraha, the substance. The gold is also nityaha. It is the durable reality. The bangle comes and goes, but the gold remains. Gold is the saraha. Gold is nitya. And then the third thing is that what really exists is the gold. The gold has independent existence in this example. The bangle is just a name for a form of gold. The bangle doesn't have its own existence. The bangle borrows existence from the gold. The gold lends existence to the bangle. If we say, what is the satya? Then we have to say, gold is the satya. or Satyam. Gold is Saraha, gold is Nityaha, and gold is Satya. So now Vedanta says this is a peculiar situation. It is a gold that really exists. But in the language, we loosely say the bangle also exists. Vedanta says this is a source of confusion. The loose usage of words is a source of confusion. Vedanta is okay saying that gold exists. But Vedanta is not okay saying the bangle exists. Therefore, Vedanta says I can call gold to be Satya in this limited example, but bangle cannot be called Satya. Bangle is not Satyam. Because if you say bangle is also Satyam, what is the difference between the existence of the gold and the bangle? The gold exists independently. It has got Swatantra Satta. The bangle exists dependently. It has got Paratantra Satta. Therefore, Vedanta says, I need another word to capture this situation. Therefore, Vedanta comes up with this word called Mithya. Vedanta says gold is Satyam, all right, but bangle is Mithya. Bangle is dependently existent. It is Mithya. Bangle is just name and form. It is Mithya. Gold independently exists. Gold is the substance. Gold is Nityaha, Saraha. Gold is the Satya. Therefore, even in our language, as we saw, we use these terms loosely. We say golden bangle, golden necklace, golden chain, etc. There, the real substance, the gold, has been reduced to the adjective, and what should be an incidental attribute of the gold, that has been made into the noun. When I say golden ring, golden chain, golden necklace, the ring, chain, and necklace, they are the incidental forms of gold, but they have been made into nouns in our language. So Vedanta says that it would be more appropriate to call this chainy gold, necklacey gold, ringy gold, bangly gold, etc. Then it becomes clear that what exists is gold and everything else is incidental name and forms of gold. So now we come to this world. If we ask the question, Vedanta asks the question, what is the Satyam here? What is it that really exists here? And the scientists also have been trying to get to this. As we saw, the scientists have been probing into matter. And as we have all studied in our physics and chemistry books, when we studied science, we were told that molecules exist. So if science says that molecules exist, and molecules have independent existence, and molecules become the Satyam, and everything else becomes names and forms of molecules. But then molecules themselves don't have independent existence. They are dependent upon atoms. So if science says that atoms are the Satyam, then molecules also become Mithya and everything else are names and forms of atoms. And science has even broken the atoms into subatomic particles, protons, neutrons, and electrons. If they say protons, neutrons, and electrons, at some point they were saying that these are the basic building blocks before they had broken them up further. So at that point, they would have said that protons, neutrons, and electrons are what exist, and everything else is just names and forms of those in different configurations. And science has continued to break these particles. And now they have some 45 subatomic particles. I don't know the exact count because that keeps changing every 10 years, I suppose. They have some 40 odd subatomic particles in the standard model of physics, where they have come up with leptons and mesons and bosons and so on. And when science breaks these particles down, they come up with this conflicting discovery that they are not able to now even categorize explicitly that these are particles. They don't even now look like particles, really speaking. Because in quantum physics, they are now saying that it is not even the particles that exist, because one cannot definitely pinpoint a particle as being here. It appears to be in multiple places at the same time. At the same time. Not at different times. At the same time, science is not able to pinpoint the particle is here. It says there is a certain probability it's here, certain probability it's here, 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 and so on. It is all probabilities now. They are not able to pinpoint the particle. It is as if the particle is in multiple places at the same time. And it is not just as if. When they direct a beam of particles through this double slit experiment. We have talked about this briefly before, but they have this experiment where there are two slits very close to each other. Now, when a wave is passed through this, then what happens is when the wave strikes these two slits, then a part of the wave passes through the first slit and a part of the wave passes through the second slit. So the other side of the double slit, the wave becomes two waves. It becomes two waves. And when it becomes two waves, the two waves interfere with each other. And therefore it creates an interference pattern on a screen on the other side. You can imagine this if you throw two stones into a pond. Let's say you throw two stones into a pond. Then the two stones create ripples. And as the ripples move forward, they will intersect with each other. And then you kind of get this funny pattern of intersection of two waves. And that is what the scientist observes on the screen. He says this is an interference pattern. And therefore, when anything is passed to two slits, if an interference pattern is observed on the other side, the scientist says that this must be a wave. There is no other way you can get an interference pattern. So now let us say that you're firing bullets at the two slits. If you're firing bullets at the two slits, then some of the bullets will just fall on this side because some don't pass through the two slits at all. But then some bullets will pass through the first slit and some bullets will pass through the second slit. And what you expect on the screen on the other side is two lines of bullets. That's what you would expect if you're passing particles through this double slit. So before this double slit experiment was done, the scientists were expecting that if these particles are passed through the double slit, I will see two lines on the other side. But then what these scientists discovered is that when subatomic particles are passed through these two slits, one particle at a time, still observes an interference pattern on the other side. This is what led to the birth of quantum mechanics. Because they were shocked when they saw this. Because particles are no longer particles. The same particle passes through both the slits. Only then you can explain the interference pattern. So this shook the world of science. They are now saying particles are not particles really, but they are more like waves. They seem to exist in multiple places at the same time. Therefore, now science has still not really said what exists. Scientists have come up with mathematical models for all of these waves and all that. They have the mathematics, but they don't know what exists. So what Vedanta says is that science is probing into matter, and science will never be able to conclude what exists because this is Maya that they are probing into. And Maya will forever be mysterious. But Vedanta categorically says that it is Brahman that exists. Brahman is an all pervading, formless, attributeless reality. That is what exists. And Brahman will forever be beyond the range of science because it is attributeless. It cannot be detected by any of our senses or any of the instruments because instruments also need attributes. Whether it is our sensory instruments, they work based on attributes, or even scientific instruments, they need attributes. Wavelength, the frequency, or whatever, they need some attribute. But Brahman is attributeless, and therefore it will forever remain beyond the range of science. Science will be busy trying to probe into matter. They may continue to break the subatomic particles. Vedanta will say this process will continue ad infinitum. You will continue to break this, break this, break this. You will never come to a conclusion about what exists. So Brahma Satyam, Brahman is the Satyam that really exists. How does Vedanta define Satyam? Trikala abadhyam yat tat sat. That whose existence cannot be dismissed in the three periods of time, that is Sat. So before this world came into existence, Brahman was. Even now, when this world exists, Brahman is. And after this world will go away, Brahman will remain. Just as before the bangle came into existence, gold was. When the bangle is, gold still is. Gold doesn't change. If gold were to change, people would hesitate to make ornaments. They know that gold remains intact. The world of the gold, the weight of the gold remains intact. That is why people make ornaments. And after the ornament goes, after the bangle goes, gold remains. Similarly, before the world was, Brahman was. Even now, when the world is, Brahman is. After the world goes, Brahman remains. Brahman is the Tattva, the Satya. Then what about this world? So is this world non-existent? We say Vedanta will not say the world is non-existent. Why? Because we saw what non-existence is. Mrugat Trishna Bhasi Snataha Khapushpa Krita Shekharaha Esha Vandya Suto Yati Shasha Shringa Dhanurdharaha. We saw in that example what non-existence is. This person who is the son of a barren woman, he takes a bath in mirage water. He decorates his hair with sky flowers, and he's carrying a bow that is made of rabbit's horns. So none of these exist. A bath in mirage water is impossible. Rabbit's horns are impossible. Sky flowers are impossible. And the one doing all this, the son of a barren woman, is impossible. These are all asat, which don't ever exist in the three periods of time, past, present, and future. And therefore, the asat can never be experienced. But this world is experienced. Therefore, Vedanta says the world is not asat like this rabbit's horns. The world is not sat either, because Sat can only be Brahman, which really exists. So there is absolutely non-existent Atyantika Abhava, Atyanta Abhava, absolutely non-existent rabbit's horns, or son of a barren woman. And then there is the absolutely existent, which is Brahman. The world cannot be categorized as asats. The world cannot be categorized as sat also. Therefore, Vedanta says, I need another word to describe what the world is, describing the status of the existence of the world. It cannot be categorized as sat. It cannot be categorized as asat. Sat chet na badhyeta. If the world was Sat, then its existence could never be dismissed, but its existence is dismissed upon the knowledge of Brahman. Until Brahman is known, the world appears real. Until the waker is known, the dream world appears real. The negation of the dream world, the negation of the reality of the dream world happens only after waking up. Similarly, the negation of the reality of this world happens only when one understands the super waker Brahman. And therefore, this world cannot be classified as Sat, because its existence is negated. The reality of its existence is negated upon the knowledge of Brahman. The world cannot be asat. Asat chet na pratiyeta. If the world was asat, it would not even have been experienced. But the world is experienced. And therefore, it cannot be classified as sat. It cannot be classified as asat. We need a third category called mithya. For this world is mithya, just nama rupa. It is experienced. It is not asat because it is experienced. It is not sat because it is just nama rupa. It doesn't have its own substance. It thrives on borrowed existence. So mithya is this extremely important category that Vedanta introduces between sat and asat. This is an essential pillar of the Vedantic teaching. As we saw in a few classes ago, Brahma Satyam is one pillar. Brahma Satyam, that Brahman is the only Satyam, is one pillar of the Vedantic teaching. Jagan Mithya is the second pillar. Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha is the third pillar. So this Mithya is something that cannot be categorized as Sat, cannot be categorized as Athat, and therefore it's not categorizable. Its existence is not categorizable. You cannot say it is, you cannot say it is not. And therefore, it's called anirvachaniyam. Anirvachaniyam. Anirvachaniyam means something that cannot be categorized. So this world is mithya. It is anirvachaniyam. We talked about three words, asat, mithya, and sat. And all of these three words describe the status of existence of objects in the world. So now we will talk about some key principles of Vedanta with regards to Satyam and Mithya. The first principle is that any Mithya Vastu must have a Satyam Adhishthanam. Any Mithya Vastu must have a Satyam Adhishthanam. Why? Adhishthanam means a substratum, something that lends existence. So Mithya is just names and forms. Names and forms cannot exist by themselves. Names and forms require the substance that lends existence. Because names and forms thrive on borrowed existence, and therefore they require a lender of existence. You see somebody who has no income, but then you see this person living in a palatial house and driving a lot of cars and all that, and he has absolutely no income and nothing at all. Somehow he's doing it, and the only way to explain is he is living on some borrowed money. Similarly, this world has no existence of its own, but then it's experienced. The only way to explain it is that it has borrowed existence. The bangle has no existence of its own, but it is experienced as though existent. The only way to explain it is that it has borrowed existence, borrowed from gold. Therefore, Mithya cannot exist independently of Satyam. Therefore, every Mithya Vastu must have a Satyam Adhishthanam. This is the first Satyam Mithya principle. Then the second Satyam Mithya principle is that one Satyam plus any number of Mithyas is still one Satyam only. We don't say gold exists and bangle also exists. We don't say that the bangle cannot be counted separately. The bangle need not be counted separately. When we have said gold exists, that includes the lent existence to the bangle also. The bangle is also accounted for when we say gold exists. Mithya cannot be counted separately. One gold plus one bangle plus one necklace plus one chain doesn't make it four. It's still one gold only. So similarly, here we don't say Brahman exists and world also exists. No. One Brahman plus any number of names and forms is still one Brahman. One Brahman minus any number of names and forms is still one Brahman. So Mithya cannot be counted separately. One Satyam plus any number of names and forms, or one Satyam minus any number of names and forms, always remains one Satyam. Then the third and the most important Satyam Mithya principle is that Mithya can never ever affect Satyam. This is where we use a term called an order of reality. And this is a term that we will be using more often in the classes. But it's important to understand what this means, order of reality. So Satyam is a higher order of reality than Mithya. Mithya is a lower order of reality. So the existence belongs to the higher order of reality. The lower order of reality thrives on borrowed existence. So Satyam is the higher order of reality. Mithya is the lower order of reality, just substanceless names and forms. An object in a lower order of reality can never affect the higher order of reality. Just as mirage water can never wet the sand. The dream world, whatever happens in the dream world can never affect the waker. in the dream world, when the dream world is taken to be real, one may be struggling. But once one wakes up from the dream world, once one finds the Satyam of the dream world is really the waker. And one understands, one brushes away the dream world, saying that it is impossible for whatever happened there to affect me. In fact, even when one is in the dream world cannot touch the waker. One doesn't have the knowledge in the dream world, that's all. But in reality, the dream world leaves the waker unaffected. Even in the dream, the dream individual who is ignorant is the one who is affected. But let us say the dream individual has recognized somehow that he is one with the waker. Then he knows that this dream world cannot touch me. Mirage water can never wet the sand. The dream world can never affect the waker. A dent in the gold bangle can never affect the gold. Even if the bangle gets crushed, the gold is unaffected. So Mithya can never ever touch the Satyam. This is the key principle. And in this lies the gateway for moksha. So being unaffected by Mithya, it is a fundamental character of Satyam. One cannot take this away from Satyam, no matter what. No matter what happens to names and forms, the Satyam stays unaffected. This is not changeable. This is the nature of Satyam. When we say something is the nature, like fire is the heat is the nature of fire. One cannot take the heat away from fire. Sweetness is the nature of sugar. One cannot take sweetness away from sugar. Similarly, the nature of Satyam is fundamentally being unaffected by Mithya. There are a lot more Satyam and Mithya principles which we will talk about as we move forward. But for now, these are enough to get our feet wet to move further. So now, Brahman is Satyam and all else is Mithya, is what Vedanta is saying. Now, how do I know this Brahman? If Brahman is so important, then I have to know this Brahman. How do I know this Brahman? And this is where Vedanta gives the mind-boggling answer. That Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya. We talked about the two pillars of the Vedantic teaching. The third pillar is Jivo Brahmaiva Na Paraha. That this Jiva, essential nature of the Jiva is Brahman. The one who is asking, how do I know Brahman, is Brahman. And you are that Brahman. This is the final liberating knowledge that I have to come to when I understand that I am that Brahman. That is like waking up from that dream world. Then I understand that Mithya cannot touch this Satya. So this is the Tattva Viveka, the understanding that this is talking about here. The understanding that I am that Satyam, all else is Mithya. Let's take some time to pause and think about the implications of this. That I am the Satyam, all else is Mithya. The existence of everything else depends on me. I am the one who is independently existent. The existence of all this depends upon me. I alone really am existent. Everything else appears to exist. मय्येव सकलं जातं मयि सर्वं प्रतिष्ठितं मयि सर्वं लयं याति तद् ब्रह्माद्वयम् अस्म्यहम्. In me all this has arisen. By me all this is sustained, and in me all this will resolve. Non-dual, that non-dual Brahman I am. And being unaffected by Mithya is the nature of Satyam. Whatever happens to Mithya, Satyam stays untouched. Therefore, whatever happens to the names and forms of this world, I am fundamentally unaffected. This understanding is moksha. Therefore, the understanding alone is moksha, because moksha is my own nature. Being Satyam, I am not affected by anything else. This is my nature. My nature is moksha. Problem is, I don't understand it. So this is the vision that I have to come to. And one may feel, how is this even possible? How is this possible? Because I am the small speck in the wide universe. How can I be the Satyam? How can the existence of all this depend upon me? If you measure my length, I am like one to 1.5 feet across. And what science tells me is the entire world is around 30 or 40 billion light years across. A mind-boggling number. We see the velocity of light, that is 300,000 kilometers per second approximately. 300,000 kilometers per second. In 1 second, light can go around the earth about 10 times. Now, if we take the distance that light travels in 1 year, so in 1 second it travels 300,000 kilometers. If we take the distance the light travels in 1 year, it will be a very large number, 300,000 into 186,000 seconds per day into 365, whatever that is. If we do that, we'll arrive at a very big number. That's the distance light travels in 1 year. Now take the distance light travels in 40 billion years. That is 40 billion light years. 40 billion years, or 30 billion years, whatever that number is. That is what this estimated size of the universe is. How can the existence of all this you're telling it depends upon me? That sounds absurd. So one can dismiss this as being absurd. What Vedanta says is that the reason you think it is absurd is because you have not understood what this I is. You have mistaken yourself, is what Vedanta says. You have mistaken yourself, and therefore you're saying, I'm this small speck in this vast universe. You have not really known who you are. You have not known the Tattva. You have not known the Brahman. And as a result of not knowing, one invariably makes a mistake and one takes something that I am not to be what I am. And then all of this, of course, will follow. For example, let us picturize the dream individual in the dream. The dream individual will say that this is a huge world here. And if this dream individual was given this teaching in the dream that you are the Satyam, he will argue that, I am so small, this world is so large, how can I be the Satyam? How can this large world be dependent on this puny me? Then he has to wake up. And once he sees that I am identical with the waker, upon waking up, then he will indeed say, yes, the dream world was in me. Therefore, what Vedanta is saying, that one has to understand what I truly am. Therefore, Vedanta uses this term called Atma for the real I. Atma Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyeti is what Vedanta is saying here. Tattva Vivekah Kaha Atma Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyeti. This real you, Vedanta is saying, is the Satyam. So this implies that Vedanta understands that there is the mistaken I. And whatever, if I'm arguing that I cannot be the Satyam, and Vedanta points out that what you are talking about yourself right now is a mistaken I. The Atma, this word Atma, it is really a Nakaranta Shabdaha, Atman Shabdaha. In the language, in English also, we use the word I. And the Sanskrit equivalent for that is Aham. Aham gachami, aham khadami, etc. I am going, I am eating. So aham is the equivalent first person singular for the word I. But then in the English, we also have this word called self. So I write on the checks, for example, pay to self. So when I say pay to self, that means I'm paying myself. So the word self also refers to I only, it doesn't refer to somebody else. Similarly, in Sanskritam, there is a word called Atma, Atman, which is the equivalent of the word self, which can be used in the third person. I is used in the first person, self is used in the third person. We don't say self am going. We say if I am going is okay. We don't say self am going. We say self goes. Just like he goes, she goes. The self goes can be one way of saying I am going. Similarly, the Atman is a third person word that indicates the self only. I. So Atma Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyeti, that you are Satyam. So when Vedanta uses this word Atma, then it is used in the sense of an imperishable inner essence. There is an imperishable inner essence of this individual. That Vedanta calls the Atma. But how now this imperishable inner essence is the very subject. We have talked about this, the subject and the objects. There are objects in the world, and then there is the subject, the I. So the subject is not objectifiable. I can objectify objects in the world. For example, this is a pen. I can see it using my senses because it is an object. But the self, the drik and the drishyam, everything drishyam can be seen, objectified by the senses. But the self, this subject, is not available as an object. Therefore, the subject is never objectifiable. Therefore, we can call this the unobjectifiable inner essence of the individual. That is the Atma. But then one can ask a question that if the subject is never objectifiable, then how do I know? How do I know it? Because if there is a pen, I can make sure, yes, I can see it with my senses, it is there. It is objectifiable. But if the self is not objectifiable, how do I even know it? So we say that the subject is the one that objectifies everything. The self is the one that objectifies everything, but the subject cannot be objectified, all right, but the subject need not be objectified. Why? Because I am self evident. I am self evident. This is an important idea. Just as there is a light bulb, let us say, in a dark room, nothing is lit. But the moment one brings a light bulb into the dark room, then everything starts to get lit up. I can know everything that the light illumines. But then, do I need another light to illumine that light? I don't need another light to illumine the light bulb because the light bulb is self illuminating. It illuminates everything, it also illumines itself. It doesn't need to be illuminated by anything else. Similarly, everything is known by me, by this I, by this self. But then I don't need anything else to know this self. This self is self evident. So the Atma then, so we are adding one word after another. We started with it's the imperishable inner essence of the individual. Then we said it is the unobjectifiable, imperishable inner essence of the individual. And then we are now saying it is the self-evident, unobjectifiable, self-evident inner essence of the individual. Even in the darkest of rooms, if I sit there, and if I ask you, you and I are sitting there, I ask you, are you there? And nobody will say, I have to consult my wife and I will let you know whether I am there or not. Nobody says that. Everybody will say, yes, I am there. Even though one has pitch darkness, one cannot see oneself, still one has no doubt, I am there. If we imagine a person who is deaf and blind since childhood, we can somehow simulate this. We can try this, close our ears, close our eyes. Nothing enters my senses. Even such a person will not doubt that I am there. He may still be able to touch something and say, I am touching it. So I have, this is the one thing that nobody has any doubt about, that I am. That source of that I am, from there, from where that I am arises, that is that unobjectifiable, self-evident inner essence known as the Atma. So Vedanta is not needed to know the existence of Atma. Well, Atma's existence I know without anybody teaching me. Vedanta is needed to remove the misconceptions that I have about who I am, about this Atma. Therefore, these words are introducing me to myself. This is what we had said earlier. The words of Vedanta are introductory words. They are not descriptive words. They are the carriers. They are not the carriers of knowledge gained through other means. Like science is all words that are carriers of knowledge gained through other means. But the Vedika Shabda Pramana are the words which themselves are the revealers of knowledge that cannot be gained through any other means. Just as the 10th man was introduced to himself that you are the 10th man that you are seeking. In the absence of this knowledge, he would have continued his seeking for the 10th man. Here the words are introducing me to myself, that Atma, the real you, is the Satyam. Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyeti. This knowledge I cannot gain from anywhere else. It's impossible to gain this from anywhere else because the Atma is never an object, it's always the subject. So what these words are telling me is that unobjectifiable, self-evident inner essence of you, the Atma, is the Satyam that has independent existence. And the existence of everything else depends upon you. You are the Satyam. So I have been using this word I all my life. I can write an autobiography about myself. Vedanta says that you have not understood what you really are. And similarly, I can write volumes and volumes about this world. That's what the scientists are doing, historians are doing. But in the vision of Vedanta, they have not understood what the world is. In fact, Vedanta says the world cannot be categorized as is, the world cannot be categorized as is not. At that fundamental level itself, there's an unanswered question: is the world there or is it not there? There are all these open problems that the scientists talk about. That, these are the greatest open problems of the 21st century. That what are the interpretations of quantum mechanics, etc. Vedanta says here is an open problem. Is the world there or is it not there? This is an open problem, and Vedanta says that nobody will ever be able to solve this open problem because it is impossible to say the world is there. It is impossible to say the world is not there. Either way, it's the wrong answer. You have to come to Vedanta to understand Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyeti. So, in the absence of the knowledge of the Tattva, one invariably misunderstands the Tattva. I have misunderstood myself, I have misunderstood the world, and misunderstood Ishvara in the process. And therefore, a discriminative inquiry into the Tattva is required. And this is what the rest of the text is about. Is given the entire teaching in the Sutra Bhuta Vakyam, Atma Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyeti. The rest of the text is an elaboration on this, on how to do the discriminative inquiry to clear this mix-up that I have and come to understand who I really am. So with this, we'll conclude the class today. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. Yes, Vishwanath ji, you have comments?
Namaskaram ji. Namaskaram. I have a doubt today, some confusion as well, you can say that way.
Yeah.
So, what I understood from today's topic, Ishvara pervades the entire world in the universe. This is the first point I understood. Am I correct, sir?
Can you repeat that part?
What I understood from today's
Yes.
topic,
Yes.
Ishvara pervades everything, the entire world,
Yes.
the
Pervades.
universe.
Right. Right.
And also today's topic is giving me a clarity that I am the Brahman, I am the Satyam,
Hmm.
and world is Mithya, and Ishvara is also a Satyam. Am I right, sir?
Yes, you can continue and you can
Yeah,
finish
yeah, yeah, yeah,
your
yeah, yeah. My
thing, and then
my
I
my
can.
my yeah, yeah. My doubt here is
Yes.
when the Ishvara pervades the entire world,
Hmm.
how about other living being? Because we are talking about the human being that I am the Satyam in this today's
Yes.
topic. How
Yes.
about the animals and the other living beings? Are they coming under the classification of Satyam or come under classification of Mithya? This doubt arose to me based on the today's topic, sir.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
So, um, regarding Ishvara pervading everything, yes, that is true. And what we say is that the reality of the Jivaha, Jagat, and Ishvaraha is one Tattva, like we said. So it
Mm,
is that Tattva Brahman that pervades everything. And Brahman and Ishvara are terms that are used interchangeably. Brahman is
yeah.
the reality of Ishvara also. So you can say that Ishvara pervades everything. There is nothing wrong with that. Now, with regards to the question about uh, Ishvara being Satyam. So we will come to that when we discuss Ishvara. But Ishvara is really Brahman, the Tattva, is the one Tattva who is behind the Jiva as well as Ishvara and the Jagat. It's the one Tattva underlying all the three. So
Okay.
the reality of the Jiva is Brahman, reality of the world is Brahman, reality of Ishvara also Brahman. Because if we talk
Mm,
about Ishvara as Jagat Karta, Ishvara is the creator of this world, then Brahman alone is not the creator of this world.
mm,
We have to bring in Maya.
mm,
Brahman, along with Maya, becomes Ishvara, Jagat Karta Ishvara, creator of this world. And therefore, we say that this creating the world, this creatorness of the world, if you call that, that is also not a fundamental attribute of Brahman.
mm.
That is not the Tattva. The Tattva is Brahman, this one that pervades everything, this existence, consciousness. We will come to all that, that pervades this all pervading existence, consciousness is Brahman. But that Brahman is not this Karta, not this Jiva also. The Brahman is not the Ishvara in the sense of the Jagat Karta also. The one reality that pervades Jiva, Jagat, and the Creator Ishvara. So this is the second part, response to the second part of the question. And then the third part with regards to other jivas.
Mm,
So Vedanta says jivo brahmaiva na paraha. So the jiva is not different from Brahman. The reality of the jiva is Brahman. Vedanta doesn't say that the human being alone is not different from Brahman. So the jiva is not different from Brahman. So this applies to all the jivas around us, whether it be the tiny caterpillar or an elephant or whatever, this huge whale in the ocean, the essence of all that, they all have the same Atma.
okay.
The one Atma underlying every Jiva. That Atma
Mm,
is Brahman.
okay.
Therefore, that's how the Advaitam comes about. That there is one Satyam that pervades everything. all the
Okay.
jivas.
Okay.
And that Satyam is non-dual. Non-dual means that it cannot be counted, the mithyas cannot be counted separately. That's how
Yeah,
the
that you told.
non-duality comes. That it is not
yeah.
just the one, it is the only one that is really there. No matter what name and form it appears in, behind that name and form, there is that one reality.
Yeah, clear. Absolutely clear. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, shall we conclude then? Hari Om.
Hari Om. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om. Thank you.
Hari Om. Hari Om.